I'm the dungeon coach, and I'm going to put the tyrant back in Tyrantosaurus. Because normal monsters can be a little bit too bland sometimes. I'm here to spice them up. Let's go. So up top right here is a normal Tyrannosaurus Rex, and over here is a Tyrantosaurus Rex. He's a real tyrant. But look at this Tyrannosaurus, okay? Armor class 13, hit points, speed, has normal stats, perception, we'll talk about that here in a second. All this is pretty normal, and literally all it has is a multi-attack with a bite and a tail. The only actual Tyrannosaurus flavor that this thing has is its bite attack. Flavor? Huh? If you bite a medium or smaller creature, it's instantly grappled and restrained. That's literally it. And as you can tell with my Tyrantosaurus over here, we're going to add a bunch of this thing. But I'm going to be giving my homebrew thoughts on how I turned this into this. So going through here, I did bump the armor class up to 14. I just felt like that was more respectable. Hit points are 200. I could easily put this at something like 400, but I would need to know the damage output of my party and how many party members there were, but that would be a whole nother video. So I'm giving it a generic 200 for right now. The speed is still 50 feet. That seems fine for a quick moving T-Rex. But if you notice, all I put in here for all of his ability modifiers are just the modifiers. Looking at the Tyrannosaurus Rex over here, I don't care his strength's 25, 10. You never use those numbers. And if for some crazy reason I need to, I guess I could backwards math it from there. I upped its strength and I upped its constitution. And if you notice right here, I just have proficiency +4. As a DM, whenever I'm looking over here at the skills and I see it has perception +4, I don't want to have to keep checking on this Tyrannosaurus on what things, skills this monster is proficient in. So I give all of my monsters a proficiency bonus, and if I think that monster would be proficient at that type of thing, they get the bonus. Easy as that. So if this Tyrannosaurus is doing some sort of strength-based movement that would be kind of like athletics, I would give a +4 bonus on top of that. So if there's some type of jaw grappling situation or some type of throw that this monster is going to do, I'm adding +4 to that roll because it would make sense, and I wouldn't just do this +8 for strength. It'd be +12, just like its saving throws. Whenever this thing would have to make a saving throw, I'd think if it was proficient in that or not. And off the top of my head, strength and constitution sound like things to be proficient in, so it would add +4 on top of those stats. This is a quick way for me to on the fly come up with what type of skills and proficiencies that this thing would be good at. And if it comes to scent or smell or something, yeah, I'd add +4 because it would make sense for a T-Rex to have that. After I was done making this thing, I put a challenge rating of 12 there. Even though I don't use the challenge rating system, I wanted to give this to you guys so at least you could kind of eyeball it from there. Now let's get into the actions. Here we go. I gave it a multi-attack and I kept the same thing. It gets 1 bite and 1 tail attack. But my goodness, is this way cooler than that. So the +12 to hit does come from the +8 to strength and the +4 to proficiency. 8 + 4, 12. Math. The bite attack's pretty much the same here, and it has the extra grapple and restrain effect if you have a creature in your mouth. The bite attack's pretty much the same here, and when you land a bite attack, it grapples any medium or smaller creature in your mouth. But keep that in mind here in a second. It also has a tail sweep attack. I think the tail attack, just a random little swat of the tail, now that doesn't feel like a Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus timeout. I really wanted to say this. Whenever I homebrew any type of monster, I want to know what specific thing that sets that monster apart from any other monster. What about a Tyrannosaurus do I want to get across the feel of to my players? They're huge, terrifying kings of the jungle that could stomp the ground and swirl their tail around, fighting off multiple things. I'm picturing a Tyrannosaurus fighting off a bunch of raptors. So I hope when I go through a lot of these abilities here in a second, it really feels like what you would think a Tyrannosaurus would feel like. Back to it. I'll put a diagram up so you can see where the Tyrannosaurus is and where all the squares would be in effect so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's a sweeping attack with the Tyrannosaurus spinning around, hitting multiple things. And this is a cool mechanic that I do a lot of times that I've given my players an option of. And if you want to add these type of homebrew moments to your game, throw these at your players and see what they think of them afterwards. When the Tyrannosaurus makes his attack, each player in the danger zone can choose to make a strength or a dexterity saving throw, and they get different punishments for which one they chose. If they try and nimbly dodge the thing, they get tripped up and fall to the ground, prone. Or if they try and stand their ground and get hit by this thing, they would get launched. If either one of them succeed, they take no damage from this thing, but if they fail, they also take 48. That's 4d8, not 48. You get it. Going on to bonus actions now, I think big bad monsters should have bonus actions, especially if you want this Tyrannosaurus to really feel like its own thing. But I gave conditions to these bonus actions so it wouldn't take up time and it have certain situational things that I as the DM can go for when I'm playing this thing. So one of the conditions is a crushing stomp. Anytime as a bonus action, any creature is prone within your range, you can stomp it, an extra attack. Or the second one here is crushing jaws. Anytime you have something in your mouth, you can chomp it one more time. You want the mechanics of your monsters to make your players feel something. If they're prone on the ground, that should be a scary thing, because it should be if you're prone underneath a T-Rex. Or in its mouth, of course. I also added a passive Enrage to this thing. When it drops below Well Bloodied, Bloodied is half health, which would be 100 hit points. Well Bloodied is 50 health. 25%. Some more math for you. But it becomes enraged and gains an additional damage die to whatever damage it rolls, and +2 on top of all its attacks. But another cool twist here is it now also becomes vulnerable to cold damage. We'll talk more about that here at the end. What I'm about to get into here are Matt Colville's villain actions from Action-Oriented Monsters and Zbashu's Witchery monsters, which I've already done 2 videos on. I dive into a bunch of new ways to make your monsters really terrifying that you can see a lot of the inspiration of in what I do. And this entire video was caused by me doing an unboxing video where I unboxed this Tyrannosaurus and I wanted to run with it. But the next monster I do is going to be picked from down in the comments. So comment down below what monster you want to see me take, homebrew, and run with. Because I gotta brew them all. Homebrew on! I'm sorry, let's go. Now these villain actions are really going to separate this T-Rex to make it truly terrifying. And speaking of terrifying, terrifying roar. Basically, these are things monsters can do at the very beginning of the round, just like legendary actions, to start things off with. This is a mechanic you've probably seen before with a terrifying roar that a lot of creatures do, but I added an extra twist to it. You make a wisdom saving throw, and if you succeed, then you're totally fine. You're not afraid of this thing. You're ready to fight. But if you do fail, you gain the frightened condition, and you can roleplay this in many different ways. You don't have to literally be terrified of the thing. So if you don't know, the frightened condition means you have disadvantage on all ability checks or attack rolls while in line of sight of the creature on anything you do, even if you're not attacking that creature, and you cannot actively move towards that creature. But what this lingering doubt does, as soon as you succeed your saving throw, you no longer have the frightened condition, but you still have disadvantage on all attacks towards that creature, the one that caused you to be afraid in the first place. You can still fight other things and move towards it now, but you still have a little bit of lingering doubt towards this one creature until you land an attack of any kind, and then you're back to normal. So many times these terrifying roars, things that these monsters do, don't feel terrifying at all, and then everybody makes a wisdom saving throw, and they eventually save on it, and then it's gone. This just feels cooler to me. And then now we're going on to round 2. We have a Tyrant Tornado. He gets a free bite attack and spins in a full 360 circle now with that tail sweep. And in this crazy whirling dervish of a Tyrannosaurus, if you have any creature in your mouth during this 360 spin, you can choose to launch them 30 feet. Man, this thing would be so fun to run. And speaking of running, round 3, you have Desperation Charge. At this point in the battle, things are getting pretty desperate, so you run in a 15 feet wide, 100 foot long charge. You choose a creature that's the farthest away or some other strategic creature of your choice. So you charge from point A to point B, and any creature in your wake of destruction makes a saving throw just like that tail sweep attack. And after everybody takes all that damage, including the person you charged into, you get a free bite attack. This Tyrannosaurus is fighting for its life. Finishing up with his legendary actions now, it gets more stuff that it can do, and if you want to change the power scale of this Tyrannosaurus, you don't have to give it full 3 legendary actions. You could even give it no legendary actions, because this thing is pretty beastly. But I personally would give it at least 1 legendary action, and you can make it a single attack, a single stomp attack, which we already talked about from the bonus actions, a headbutt launch to kind of like launch the target 30 feet, kind of like what was part of the Tyrant Tornado thing too. This is where that athletics check thing came about. And I know it's weird to think of a T-Rex doing athletic type things, but it would make an athletics check against somebody else to see if they could launch them. This is where I also wanted to add that stomp thing I talked about earlier, about stomp and run, where it takes 2 actions to do this one, but you stomp the earth beneath you, triggering a dexterity saving throw, or they'll fall prone, and then you run 50 feet of movement, not provoking any opportunity attacks. This last section here is going to say weaknesses whenever you click it down below, but this is what the Witchery monsters touches on. The Tyrannosaurus has a weak spot in the back left of its leg that's wounded from a previous battle he's had. This adds some flavor and character and depth and history to this thing. This isn't some T-Rex that's only waiting to fight your players. This thing has gone through battles for decades. There's a section of scales on its back leg that's loose, damaged, or scarred, and you'd never know at first glance, but if you notice with some sort of perception, or you're actually looking for something like that, or if your players describe, is there anything that I see? Is there any weak spots on this thing? But I would not tell my players anything like this unless they truly asked for it or learned about it or researched it. This is what gets into the Witchery monsters type thing, and even like we talked about the passive it has about being weak to cold damage or vulnerable to cold damage whenever it's enraged. If your players know about this type of stuff, they can take advantage of it, making the monster easier to defeat, because you should reward them for thinking creatively and really preparing for this thing. You could also foreshadow this with some clues that there was a blood trail leading up to the Tyrannosaurus as they were hunting it down. You could also subtly describe some sort of limp whenever they are approaching it. Or if your players are all willy-nilly, keep it close to the chest and don't don't tell them nothing. But in order to hit this spot, you need to first know about its existence, that it's there in the first place, and be on the left side of the creature to have a good shot at it. You make a roll at disadvantage to be able to hit this location, still needing to hit that 14 armor class. If you hit this spot, it causes the creature's movement speed to be cut in half, and it can no longer make a charge or stomp attack. So if you thought this creature was too powerful or too crazy, then these type of things can bring it down a notch. But this is cool because your players have to earn that ability to figure out how to take this thing and make it less dangerous, instead of just running into combat trying to hack it down. And speaking of layer actions, I did not put layer actions into this monster's stat block because I don't know what layer you're going to want to put this thing in. I'm planning on doing a whole different homebrew document on different layers that you give different monsters, because layer actions don't have to be tied to the actual monster itself. I see it as more as the environment. Maybe trees are falling down because you're in the middle of forest, or quicksands all around, you're sinking into it. But that's going to be on you guys and where you fight this thing at. I really hope you guys like this behind the scenes look on how I turned this into that. And if this series does well, we'll eventually brew them all. I'm trying to make more fast-paced and punchy videos. So if you like that stuff and you really want to support what I do here, the best way to do that is support me over on Patreon. I have a ton of extra content starting at only $2 a month, and it goes up with extra reward tiers from there. It really is the lifeblood of this channel and what lets me be able to do and make more videos for you guys. And the more patrons we get, the more I crank up those rewards. So thanks for sticking around in the video, and I'll catch y'all next time. Catch like the Pokemon theme. You gotta catch them all, gotta brew them all. So stay creative and think outside that box. Peace. Oh.